allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Stacia.
Steve Jarvis.
Here.
Bill Miner.
Here.
Jim Peterson.
Here.
John Johnson.
Anyone on the phone?
Can everyone announce yourself on the phone, please?
Talbot Wyzorek.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum. All right, consent calendar. Approval of 1/27/2020 agenda. Approval of 1/13/2019, 1/13/2020 meeting minutes. And approval of claims. Any discussion?
I'd like to pull the city administrator and Connie Walters down to action items.
And those will be addressed accordingly prior to addressing of any action items. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
Motion Alderman Jarvis, is there a second?
Second.
Second Alderman Peterson. Roll call vote, please, Stacia.
Jim Peterson.
Yes.
Bill Miner.
Yes.
John Johnson.
Yes.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Okay. Before we move into public comments, I'd like to remind our audience that we are recording this meeting and it will be available in YouTube. The commitment date is by Friday, but it more than likely will be available sooner depending on upload times and things like that. So if you have any conversations, you're welcome to use the vestibule. Your voices will be picked up on the recording. With that being said, let's move into public comment. Members of the public may speak on any matter that is not on the agenda, and we ask you to please limit your comments to 2 minutes per speaker. Do we have any takers? Okay, seeing none, let's move into action items. Let's address the pay for City Administrator Brett McMacken. Do I have a discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to pay the city administrator.
Motion to release the City Administrator pay. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second, Bill Miner. Stacia, roll call vote, please.
John Johnson.
No.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
Jim Peterson.
Yes.
Bill Miner.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1. Now let's address the pay for Planning and Zoning Commissioner Connie Walters. Any discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to pay Connie Walters.
Motion Alderman Jarvis. Is there a second?
I can second.
Second Alderman Miner. Roll call vote, please.
Steve Jarvis.
Yes.
John Johnson.
No.
Jim Peterson.
Yes.
Bill Miner.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-1. Action item 6A. Approval of library aid, job description and authorization to open recruitment. I'd like to go ahead and invite our library contacts.
Terry Meisner's been around since the Mayflower came over, and Bob retired last year, and she would like to slow down.
Okay,
She wants to keep her foot in the pool, working temporarily here and there as we need her, so we need a new temporary seasonal employee, which in other words, we need a full-time, part-time.
okay,
We have 2 or 3 good-looking people at this point that would probably work. We just basically need your blessing. I think you have the hourly rate, and after 6 months, we plan on raising it to this other amount that's on here. And I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's whoever we hire will be qualified.
Has this job description changed any from the previous one?
Not really, other than the wages.
Okay.
okay. So as Alderman Jarvis has pointed out, council, the job description is in your packet with the information. Is there any discussion, questions, conversation? Hearing none.
Has the library board approved this?
Yes, you bet.
Library
you.
Has been approved, it has been approved by library board, in case some didn't hear that. Any other conversation? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion from Alderman Peterson, is there a second?
Second.
Second Alderman Johnson, roll call vote please.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
John Johnson,
Yes.
Steve Jarvis,
Yes.
Jim Peterson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Action item 6B, bid board project number 1, alley parking and play space improvements, authorization to proceed with bid process. Mr. McMacken, will you please take it away?
Yes, thank you, Darren. So this is one component of the bid board project number 1. There's kind of two different sub-projects to this overall project number 1. One is the alleyway improvements, parking improvements, and then the play space upgrades for the Boys and Girls Club property. And that's what we're going to speak about tonight. The other improvement is the senior center expansion and the restrooms, and that's the second component of it. I'm going to save that until my report out under my category, so I'm just going to talk about the alley improvements for now. So we've been working on this project for several months, and we've been kind of stuck with the electrical engineering component of it. What we've been working on is putting out electrical pedestals in the parking area or around the parking area. That's being proposed so that we can have trailers hookups, electric hookups for different activities. If you put up a stage, a temporary stage or whatnot, you can tap into this electric. The delay has been just because the economy's booming like crazy and they're hard to get any work done in a fast pace. But I have good news is that we have the alley project, Kale's part of it complete, and then we also have the electrical engineer's part complete, so I'll show you that tonight. So we are ready for your review of the project and approval to go out to bid with it. And then once I get done explaining the project, I'll go through the timeline of what we expect the bid to take, okay? So hopefully I'll answer all of your questions during my presentation, but I'll take questions at the end. So, the bid board was working on this project for quite some time, and they wanted to do some improvements to this space that's in between the Boys and Girls Club and the senior center, and essentially create some parking. And so what we're going to be looking at tonight is one is the alleyway and doing an improvement there where we're just paving, getting in some concrete curb to handle the surface water. This other component, it says Alt Add 1, that is going to be some additional, actually that changed a little bit, now it's going to be additional parking, and it's actually a little bit further south, so I need to update that on the drawing. This is a parking lot that will be Adult 2, and Adult 3 is the removal of the racquetball court that currently exists and the creation of the new play space for the Boys and Girls Club. Now, why do we call it the core project here, Alt 1, Alt 2, and Alt 3? When we go out on the bid process, they'll bid individually for these projects, so we'll know what they're bidding just for the asphalt work for the alleyway. Alt 1 will be just the asphalt and the creation of that little handicap parking space area. Alt 2 will just be that other parking space area and the removal of those alley restrooms. The third one will be just the cost associated to that play space. So I know this is kind of hard to see, so we're going to flip through here pretty good. So all of the elevations have been shot for the alleyway. We've got traffic control plans, tentative plans in place on the drawings to address construction. When construction begins, we're going to have to work with the property owners to talk about access to the backs of their buildings and when they take deliveries and whatnot so that we can work around that. We're also going to have to obtain, just like we did with the sidewalk project, we're going to have to obtain construction easements from property owners so we can set foot on their property in order to create that concrete edge of the asphalt in the street.
because we can't, it would be almost impossible to try to avoid setting any foot on somebody's private property. So we're gonna obtain all of those easements going down through here, and I already have all of those paperworks ready, all the documents are ready. Once this is approved and we're ready to move forward, then I can obtain those easements from people. So this is north, okay, so this is the alley right behind the Boys and Girls Club. Everything as far as surface water is gonna sheet flow across the street, across the alley to what would be the east side, and then it will flow down that concrete gutter out to Elm Street and then into the storm inlet. So all we're doing with this project is we're excavating existing gravel soils and then re-putting in an appropriate road base and then asphalt on top of it. There's no need for storm sewer infrastructure, and Kayla and I have discussed the sewer line that's out there. And that sewer line is relatively new, within about the past 20 years or so, and I know we had a couple of problems with it about 10 years ago with the log building and the mangy moose when it moved into that building, and those were addressed. So we're looking good as far as putting that road in without doing any other improvements. The engineer's cost for this alleyway project, according to Cale, he's looking at, it'll probably cost us about $80,000 to asphalt and do all the grading and gravel work. So we're looking at about $80,000 for that. So I'm just gonna skip through. Okay, so the alt ad 1 is really the creation of this additional handicap parking space. And so this is the alleyway right here. What happens is that we need to define some handicap space to service actually the senior center, but to count towards our requirement of handicap spaces for the other parking lot, which I'll show you here in a minute. So in this space, which is just south of that log building where the garden club does their wreaths, where the Lion Club has their trailer, the creation of 4 parking spaces for handicap. And then we're working with the architect to connect this improvements to the senior center through sidewalks and whatnot. Those connections, you'll see those on the architect's plan. We needed to kind of cut off what improvements Cale was gonna do and what improvements the architect was gonna do. So you'll see that once the architect plan is ready to go. Okay. So that parking, find my notes here. That little parking lot has been adjusted quite a bit over the past couple of months, but we're probably looking at about maybe $15,000 to create that space. Again, that's just a ballpark estimate from our discussions. The next one, this is the alt ad 2, where we create the parking spaces, and I forget how many spaces we're creating. It's like 40, I think like 42, something like that, in that realm. So essentially, again, here's the alleyway. This is that existing set of restrooms that are in the alleyway that service the basketball and tennis courts. That will get removed. This will all become asphalt, new asphalt here. This, we're just putting a new surface on the existing asphalt, so we're rehabbing what we've already got to kind of minimize costs. There is some cracking and whatnot that's on the middle here. That'll get patched up, but I think it's a good solid base for a parking lot. The other major component, which is the electrical plan, and I just literally got this morning, and I'll give you guys copies. This is too hard to view up on the big screen. For all the weight that we had, it's kind of disappointing to only see a couple of pages worth of drawings at the end of the day once it comes in.
Thank you.
But that's the nature of the business, I guess. Yep. So again, the gist of it is that we're putting in power pedestals to support events. So what's happening is there's existing lighting that is off the alleyway just north and south of the restrooms. Those power poles are gonna get relocated two different locations, so here and here. So that they're out of the way of traffic lane for cars coming in and out, circulating out of that parking lot. So that's one component. The other component is that there's going to be power pedestal over here, and then along the sides over here. And I know this isn't the plan that you're looking at there. This is just a mock-up. So it's the installation of power pedestals coming across here, here, and then here and here. What this does also show, beyond the electrical, is that we're gonna build a little bit of a wall, a block wall, so that we can put in some drainage pipe for the roof line of the Boys and Girls Club. I don't know if you've noticed it, but on that north side, there's a whole bunch of downspouts. There's about 3 or 4 of them that come down and they just daylight out to the ground. We're actually gonna put them into a pipe, cover that pipe up, put that retaining wall in there with a little short fence. And that way the Boys and Girls Club can still utilize that space in the summertime because it's grassy area. And then that'll help with the drainage to go into that pipe, and then it'll daylight out here to the east. So we put that improvement there because there's some drainage concerns. If we didn't do that drainage, we'd have quite a bit of water coming in and undermining our parking lot, because there's water that sits up there right now. The chain link fence that currently is all around here would get removed, and primarily would just be parking and event space going forward. The cost on that project is, I think it's about $45,000. Yep. For that project, and so that is alt number 2. And then alt number 3 is the play space and some more asphalt. So this is the location of the current racquetball courts. This is the building, the main building, and then the teen room for the Boys and Girls Club. So this racquetball court would get demolished. What would go back in there would be materials for drainage, and then actually there's some piping in here that would collect all of it and then pipe it out back to that drainage that we've created on the north side of the Boys and Girls Club. So it will all flow around the building and then drain out to the east. This is going to be a fenced-in AstroTurf area, so it's kind of open space and secure space. That fence runs all the way along in here, and so the kids can come just out of the doors and they're right in that space. There's not going to be like a gap or something in between it. That concrete sidewalk, which currently exists, is in pretty good shape. That will remain in there. We don't envision that to get torn out at all. And then to the south here, and they already kind of use it in this configuration. Again, this is the alleyway coming here, and then this piece right here is not currently asphalted, so that would get asphalted, and then they would just stripe it appropriately, and pretty much it's used right in this fashion right now with people parking north-south in that area. So this part of the project is about $60,000. According to our estimate. And so we're looking at about a total for this part of the overall project 1 is going to be about $200,000. Now, again, that's an engineer's estimate. We don't know the true price until it goes out to bid, and we see that real number come back from whatever contractor is interested in participating. So, I'll leave it right there. So with the approval of the bid letting of this project, Cale essentially takes care of everything. He's already got the stock agreements that we utilize, the paperwork that we utilize to contract with whoever the winning bid is. So he's taking care of all of that. There will be 2 notices that need to be put in the paper, and so we're looking at publishing, if we obtain approval to go out to bid, we would submit a notice in the paper for February 5th and then a second one for February 12th. We've tentatively scheduled a pre-bid meeting for February 18th. That way anybody can ask any questions and get clarity on the project from Kale and I, so that we know that everybody's up to speed on what they're being asked to bid on. The bid opening, we have it scheduled for February 25th. And that way we can see what bids are out there. Then after that, I'd like to take it to the bid board next for them to review the numbers and just see if they have any comments about the project. So we'd probably take that to them about March 5th. And then March 9th would be that next council meeting, and that would be brought to you for approval and review and consideration of the costs and components of it. So again, the reason why we bid it in 4 different pieces is that if you don't like costs associated to one of those components, you don't have to approve it. But it doesn't sabotage the rest of the 3. So you could say, oh, I like the cost on these 2, but I don't like the cost on the other 2. You could not approve, half of it and run with the other 2. So it gives you some flexibility, but you're still probably going to get some good pricing because there's a fair amount of asphalting work in each one of those little projects, but you're going to get the bundled price because they're going to be there. Okay. So at this point, I would ask if you had any questions of me, and ultimately, I would request approval to proceed.
I have a question. Right now, the racquetball courts, they are open to the public, correct?
They are for public use, yes.
Okay. And we're talking about now closing this area to public use.
Mhm.
Why?
So the thought process through the bid board was when we're, I know the Boys and Girls Club utilizes, so let me back up. So the way we have the lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club right now is that we lease them the building and the teen annex. Okay, we don't lease them the racquetball court, we don't lease them anything else. I know historically the Boys and Girls Club have used this space for riding bikes and outdoor activities and whatnot, water balloon fights, I don't know. And so the bid board is essentially saying, hey, we'd like to have a consideration that they need some outdoor space for the kids to utilize. And because this is becoming a parking lot and there'll be cars here, that would essentially push them out of this space to a certain extent. And so they wanted to create a space over here that would accommodate that. Now, the other comment as well was that this space would also be available to the public going forward. Even though it's fenced, it wouldn't be locked in, the public could still have access to it to utilize it, so it won't be exclusive to them. I know the racquetballs right now, they have bikes in there, and there's some challenges with that. That's gonna all have to be worked out to get those bikes removed and keep that a nice public space.
So there will be gates for the public to get inside?
Yeah,
there?
there's gonna be right where the sidewalk is that follows the building, and you've probably seen that, that sidewalk. There's gonna be a gate right next to each endpoint of that concrete up against the building, so you'll have access to it.
And it will not be restricted at any time, correct, to the public?
The intent of our conversation with the bid board was that play space be created and that the Boys and Girls Club can use it, but the public can use it as well. So there was no discussion about restriction.
Okay.
Is that space part of the space, didn't we transfer it over? I mean, didn't that have to get transferred over to the visitor center in the sense that the way that was being used before, didn't that happen?
Yeah, so, yeah.
I mean, so it's actually, that was a grant of some sort, right? Or
Yeah,
I
so
don't know
this
if
whole
it's
area in between, really, and I don't know if I can go back all the way to the, I don't know if this one shows it the best up here. This isn't the best picture. So, yeah, there was an outdoor recreation grant, and it covered essentially from that south end of the block where the parking is for the Boys and Girls Club, all the way north up to the grassy area of right in between the senior center and the current basketball courts. That was part of a grant program. And essentially, you know, for several years, we're in violation of that grant because we built the Boys and Girls Club, we built the teen annex in there. And it was supposed to be just for strictly outdoor recreation. And so that got all cleared up. We had to go through quite a bit of red tape and some different property appraisals to identify what the value of this is and in the physical space of it. We've now transferred that outdoor grant restrictions to the visitor center property. So that will remain an outdoor open area, and that will have some improvements, you know, as we move forward. So that leaves this free and clear to do the improvements that we're talking about now. You know, as far as the center is now legal, and then we can do whatever improvements we want to. So.
It leaves us open to do new things out at the visitor center with that space. If we
So-
wanted to create some kind of outdoor space,
Yeah.
say
So
like a pickleball court.
So yeah, you know, we've talked about you know, people play volleyball out there sometimes in the summer in the grass there. You know, is there an opportunity for sand pit volleyball, walking path, pickleball could be done as well.
I mean, it's open to
Yep.
whatever, yeah.
Mhm.
So that space has essentially been transferred in a sense.
Yeah.
So I would like to take the floor for a moment and comment on the racquetball courts. During the United Way Day of Caring, I participated in helping do some work for the Boys and Girls Club, and one of the efforts was to move some of those bikes and get the non-working bikes out, actually donate them to somebody who would refurbish them. They have been sitting there for a long time. So I think use of those racquetball courts has been prohibited to a certain extent because all of that old stuff was laying there. And this will hopefully open it up to a bigger use that the public can use than we have seen in the past. The only other comment that I wanted to make is it's great that we can pick up this land through the land trust, and it will always remain open space for use. We have a lot of space though, Memorial Park. There's a field within Memorial Park where the old BMX track had previously been. So we do have a lot of real estate within the city that I think at some point we can start taking a look at how can that be refurbished, how can we do walking trails, dog parks, things like that. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Are the bikes still there? For the moment? 'Cause
At least 50% of them were taken away that day, and I haven't really looked since then. I haven't made it a point, but I will to see what's there. They took all the non-working bikes, and those were donated to someone. And then some of the working bikes, I'm not sure what they thought of or had plans for, but there was quite a load of bikes that were there. I mean, it filled the whole one racquetball court. So
for years.
yeah, they were pretty rusty.
So the
Take them to
ex-
Pringle.
I took them to some guy in Rapid City who refurbs them and gives them to people.
Yellow bike,
Yeah.
yellow bike operation.
So the expectation of this project is, when it goes out to bid, there's gonna be a deadline of completion of construction by like middle of June, so like June 15th. And so, you know, this is gonna be a fairly quick turnaround for us, but, you know, a lot of it has to do with asphalt. The road itself, there's some excavation that needs to be done, but it's minimal, and then just putting the asphalt on top, and that work goes pretty quick. You know, there'll be some time forming up the concrete pans and whatnot, but all in all, this should go pretty quickly. And so we don't want to disturb for the whole summer, but yet we've got to wait for the asphalt plants to open and get the material up there that we need in order to create the space. So.
So I got a couple questions. One is on the Alt 1. You talked about walking paths. Is that included in that 15,000, or is that something that's a sub to that bed? You know, from
so
the
all of-
handicap, is there?
Yeah, so all of the ADA and sidewalks associated to the senior center improvements are on the other half of the
That's a
project.
different.
That's
so-
still coming, yeah.
Okay. So that's
The only accommodation that we're gonna make as far as ADA and linking it up with the architect's plan is, and it's probably hard to see, but it's right here. You see that little block looking thing? It's actually an ADA access point through our drainage area, so that it's ADA compliant, and it will link to a sidewalk that's going to the access point for the restrooms. All the other walkways and whatnot are gonna be on the architect's plan. So we've just connected this to make it happen.
So all this, and my next question is on what you, basically you just created this, the alley is gonna be a channelized water flow of all the water that's been either sheet draining across some of that grass, no longer gonna happen, it's gonna come out Elm.
Right.
And that has been looked at pretty hard, I would imagine.
Yeah. Cale, in his reviews, you know, he shot multiple elevations. He found all of the pins that are back in this that still exist, and verified all of it. And so he's looking at, and I know that historically we've had drainage issues back behind the senior center. You know, with this, it's a rollover curb, so it's not your typical curb like this. It actually is wider, but it still channels the same amount of water, but it's just over a longer space. And so that will capture everything, but still people can drive over it easily and get access to it.
Potentially that's a lot of water coming out onto Elm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's been channelized, that's
Yep.
before, okay, so.
Yeah. And like I said, it will all dump out to, it will all get captured here and then out to Elm.
Which is quite a bit different than what's going on, yeah. And Elm can handle it, Tom?
Yep.
We have capacity with that storm drain.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And this plan here has been obviously approved by the bid board?
Yes, yeah, it was, as I said, it was approved a while back, the general concept of it. Again, once they've approved the general concept of it, we had to put it into reality, and so this matches what their vision was. You know, some of the things that we looked at were, instead of putting parking here, we actually at one point talked about putting parking here and putting this play space or whatever here, but there's actually a significant elevation change in the alley here from this point back to McGregor, and it doesn't make sense to try to fight that little knob, that hillside that's there, and so that works out great for parking and just leaving it alone and just asphalting it, and so this brings it down to the surface. We all know that within this space behind the Boys and Girls Club and the basketball courts as well, there's drainage that comes into those areas and water sits in there. If you look at that basketball court on like the southeast corner, I bet you if you went out there today, there'd be a puddle of snow that has melted and then refrozen in that corner. That's just pretty much another ice skating or pond at this time, and that will be taken care of.
So I'd just like to encourage any additional comments from council before I open it to the public for any comment. Hearing nothing, I'll go ahead and open it to the public. Does anybody, so
My
could
only
you step
question
forward, Mike, and state your name? Sorry.
This is just an informal thing.
Mhm.
My question is the freeze thaw. I've lived around the area long enough and out in this part of the world. During the daytime, things thaw, and at night they freeze. This makes sense that everything would drain down to Elm. What happens when it doesn't? Where does it go? Does it overflow? We get a blizzard, we get snow drifts. We're counting on everything flowing down. Is it gonna flow? I mean, I don't know. You know better than I do. I would be a
Next to
little
Granite Sports is a prime example.
Right.
Yeah.
You make a very valid point. You know, we have those challenges today with the streets we've already got. You know, you create the plan so that it will flow, and Cale's run through all the numbers so that he's confident that it will flow out. But you get those situations like Granite Sports where the water is flowing north of Granite Sports, hitting that shadow and freezing, and then it kind of acts like a dam, and then it kicks that water further out into the drive lane, and it actually kind of widens it out. And so the trick is to be on top of it and keep it from, you know, forming that ice and breaking it up, getting it out of there. So it's really a maintenance issue at that point. You know, I can't say that won't happen in this alleyway,
Yeah.
But as Brett talks about maintenance, that's one of the things that we've been focusing on.
if it's gonna happen, if this is gonna create any issues, I wouldn't see any issues per se in the alley. it would maybe be on Elm,
It would be-
especially in the shadows of buildings.
Well, it's supposed to take a right then and go
Yeah.
down, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then just like it does out of Grand Sports, and it
Correct.
freezes up and.
Yep. Yeah.
And that was all.
Yep, no, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment. If no further discussion from council, I'll entertain a motion, if there is a motion to be made.
I'll make a motion to accept the bid board project number 1, which includes alley, parking, and play space improvements.
So I have a motion on the floor by Alderman Jarvis to release bid board project number 1 to the bid process. Is there a second?
Second.
Second on the floor by Alderman Johnson. Roll call, please, Stacia.
Steve Jarvis,
Yes.
John Johnson,
Yes.
Bill Miner,
Yes.
Jim Peterson.
Yeah.
Motion approved, 4-1. Progress. All right, let's jump into the report items. Hill City Library Director's Report.
Anybody have any questions on the report? You'll notice, we have 2,096 less patrons in 2019. That's because we went through our patron cards and deleted, per state, South Dakota state law. And we're done, so we're caught up with that. I did get in the email today, the state survey, so done just in time. So this year when I do it, we should be balanced out and I won't get that red flag saying, how can you have 3,000 patrons and only this many jump outs? The computer didn't like it. So this will be nice. I also went through Overdrive, deleted, we had like 5,000 people in Overdrive. So that's all, we're all even Steven there too. So that's all done. We're getting more electronic users, which is good. They're using our Overdrive. We pay for it, so I'm glad people are using it. We're getting some more high school people coming back in, slowly but surely. They're actually coming in and asking me to order books. I need this book, I need this book. So we're glad to do that. I guess, any questions on all those numbers? Takes a little studying, but,
So I'd like to take the floor for a moment. I'd like to congratulate the library, the Friends of the Library, and everyone who worked on the huge successes that you folks had in 2019. The annex is a wonderful space that is community shareable and can be used for many sources, so that's a great addition to our community. I'd also like to recognize the innovativeness that I see coming from the library. Tammy actually has a class that's going to be coming up that she's put together, so I won't give her credit for actually running it, but there's a new art that's coming out and it's book folding. So there's some pretty unique and pretty fascinating things that can be done with book folding. Clearly, books, libraries make sense, plus book sale. So it fits very nicely in the organization. I think it's a good way for you to get people in the door, drum up some more interest. So good luck, and I hope you continue with those innovations as we go through 2020.
that's the plan. And as of right now, with you included, we have 16 registered people.
Nice.
And I have this whole other group, so I can't make it that day. Can we do it another day?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be an ongoing thing.
Yep.
So it'll be fun. Speaking of that, some things coming up in that we have nailed down already for 2020. The adult reading contest will start the first week of February, and I've already got people saying, when are we going to go? When are we going to go? We're ready, we're ready. The book folding class, which is actually going to be taught by Marge Felton, she brought in, as a gift to the library, she made one that says read. And it's sitting behind us. And I said, well, now you're stuck. You're going to be teaching us how to do that. So, yeah, she's graciously volunteered to do that for us. And in March, we're going to be doing our first book and movie night, featuring the movie, or the book Liar, Liar, and then we'll watch the movie, The Good Liar, with Helen Mirren and I can't think of the guy's name. but it's a spy action
Oh,
kind of
that sounds
thing.
good.
And
We'll have popcorn too.
Yeah,
There you
well,
go.
there'll be food. Anything we do, there's food. Even at the book folding, we're gonna be eating. They're already bringing food.
I didn't know that.
See, sign up, John.
Suddenly Johnny has a new hobby and,
Right. So I
There now.
have requested less cupcakes and cookies. Let's have some hummus, some veggies and dip.
Advertise, yeah.
Yeah.
John will be saying the whole time, I'm not supposed to eat this. I'm not supposed to eat this.
In March, I also will be, March 18th, we'll be doing a training at the library. February 14th, I'm going to Pier to learn this class, and then I'll bring it back here and teach. Hopefully, Custer, Hot Springs, Edgemont, all those librarians will come up to us, and we'll be having that class in the annex.
And we're getting a grant to cover all of this too.
I've applied,
Yeah,
applied
it's
for it.
not gonna cost us a penny,
nice.
so, because it's gonna take some time and money on her part to do it, so
Mhm.
it'll be covered.
And it's taken time. Had I known it was so, it's kind of a federal, there's a lot of paperwork.
Mhm.
So, but it's a learning, I've learned. In April, I can't remember the date, I think it's the 24th, we've decided we're gonna have a family fun night with a Fantastic Beast Party. We're gonna be showing, we've got both movies, we're gonna have some hot dogs, chips, drinks. The kids are gonna make their own chalices to drink their butterbeer. And the adults too, we want, and wands. It's gonna be a fun night, and that's in the annex too. So, I just got this book today, April 17th. Author Patricia Kettleson will be coming back with another book. She's a author from Custer, and she did the Bixley Baines thing last year. This year it's Bixley and the Bees. Bees and elephants, I'm not sure what's gonna happen there. We're already booking summer reading stuff. We were just talking about how fast it's flying. We're doing summer, we're ready to get started on our summer stuff. Merchant Trick or Treat, Read for the Record, and we have our first 100 book. Young lady read her first 100 books. So I
Wow.
put that on Facebook today. So
Nice.
we got that program still going. Hoping to get some more. I'd like to, say Custer has a great program and a lot of kids signed up in it. So.
Real quick,
Yeah.
and you touched on it, again, why, I'm looking at these categories and
Mhm.
that you're down in 2019 versus 2018. What was your 21, am I reading that right? There
For
was,
patrons,
yeah, on the
Um,
visits?
visits, yes, we are
Yeah,
down.
You were
on
down,
visits.
on the computer usage, you were down, and then all these things down here, you were down. What was, better numbers, or what was, are we beyond that point of having accurate numbers now?
I think so. Those are pretty accurate.
Okay,
I mean,
so.
the computers were down because everybody owns their own now. They don't need ours
I
as
see your
much.
Wi-Fi usage was up a little bit.
The Wi-Fi is.
And is that,
They sit out in the parking lot
yeah, I see that. I see people saying that.
Yeah.
and
What-
in the street
So
everywhere.
the 2100 down, and what, 15, what was your reasoning for that? Or what do you think was happening in the visits?
Now the visits, that's not anywhere near scientific. We make a little hash mark every time somebody walks in the door.
So it's pretty.
It's not scientific. We do the best we can with that. I'm really good at it. There's a few of us that are really good at catching every person that walks in the door. But if you're in the restroom, if you're working, you just sometimes or if you're assisting a patron back by
So the computer,
nonfiction.
the computer usage is people coming in to use the computers, right?
Correct.
Yep, and that's down. Okay.
Yeah, we still have our core people that come in every day to use them. We don't have the kids coming in anymore as much. They come in periodically to play Minecraft and whatnot, but they don't need to use they have their, first of all, they have their computers from school. They come in and use their Wi-Fi, but they're not so much sitting at the computers using them to do their research and do their homework. Or they all have smartphones.
So it's
that
kind of
could-
opened it up to,
It has, we have way more
Okay.
adults that are in
Good.
there,
Yeah.
using them.
that's
The
nice.
kids, we don't have that influx of kids like we used to. I remember when I first worked at the library, I mean, you literally took almost 2 people to patrol every 30 minutes. You gotta get off. Every 30 minutes you have to, because they didn't have their own electronics.
Well, I know when you first came on, we were kind of suspect on previous numbers coming
Right.
into it, right, and that kind of thing, so that part of it. One last thing, popcorn thing, do you guys have a popcorn maker, a machine?
We have a
And you
microwave.
Just use the
I
bag.
know a couple people that that might be a neat deal. Would you be up for one, maybe?
We,
One?
we get one, we'll find a place for
I
it.
love
Okay.
popcorn. And Terry Meisner can make the best popcorn
Oh,
in the
there you
world.
go.
I don't know what she won't tell us her secret either. So, any other questions?
Thanks, Tammy.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited about some of the stuff we're doing. We're gonna utilize the annex. That's just our first movie. We're licensed to show movies. So I'm gonna utilize that license and make it worth $300-something odd a year. Once again, the kids are like, it's mostly adults that wanna come and watch movies. The kids are like, yeah, I watched it on my iPad yesterday.
When I was at school and studying.
Right, exactly, yeah, so.
So before we let Tammy go, council, would you be okay with allowing the public for comment?
I just had one question. Mike couldn't answer it. I know it's not alcohol, but what is that?
Could you come up?
Oh,
forward?
butterbeer?
Yeah, you just need to come up, state your name, and
DM McNamara. I was just curious what butterbeer was, is all.
It's non-alcoholic.
I know
I know that.
Yeah, you take a cup, you put butterscotch in the bottom, a little club soda, and Cool Whip, and then fill it up with some more club soda. It's just gonna be a sticky, terrible mess, but they're gonna love it.
and they get sugared up, and then you.
Yeah, and I send them
We
home.
do.
Now I know I'm not gonna have
That
one.
borders on health food, actually.
There you go.
I'm sure you could probably do it with any kind of caramel or chocolate. It's a Harry Potter thing.
Thank you again, and looking forward to
But I
2020.
got you down for the program.
Thank you.
I just have to.
Okay, that was the library director's report. Let's start with common council. Mr. Minor, do you have anything to report?
Attended the EDC meeting on the 16th. They did not have a quorum present, so they did not take any action. We just had some general discussion about TIF and things going on, and mostly from Superintendent Gardner on his recent coffee meetings over the holidays and the school's 2020 priorities. So, pretty quiet meeting.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
All right, thank you. Let's go Alderman Jarvis.
I'll wait to say anything about this until I was.
That's just been shared internally.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'll
that's just for us.
I'll wait to,
Okay,
any comment.
okay. Yep, that's just been put on the table. It has not
Okay.
been shared with the public yet.
Okay.
Alderman Johnson?
I went to the library meeting, but not much to say now since between you and her, so. Ambulance meeting was Tuesday night, 264 calls last year. They've had 21 calls this year compared to last year of 6 calls. And they've, working under evaluations and the employee performance reviews and redoing their handbook. That's about it.
All right. And Alderman Peterson?
A couple things. I've laid out a schedule on the mayor appointment schedule. I'd like to see if we can get that on the agenda to create a policy on that.
For discussion?
Yep.
So Stacia, could you please note that for a discussion item at our
Because
next
if we can
meeting?
get that done, you know, if we think that the schedule is needed or warranted, then
Yep.
it would be coming up.
We'll open that for
The other
discussion.
thing is I've been talking with Toby Morris on bonding issues and concepts, and still relating, you know, in terms of acquiring new funds perhaps. One would be for the paving, that kind of thing, and I should, by next meeting, I should have a lot more information, but he's come up with some ideas that might make sense, so I'd like to see if we can present that and see if we can find some monies if that, move that forward perhaps.
So if we can add that as a discussion item?
Mm-hmm.
So if I can take the floor just to comment on that. So thank you for advising me that you had reached out to Toby. I had not been aware that the rest of the council had agreed that that was something that collectively the council wanted to move forward with. So I would really like to get the feel from the rest of the council relative to the thoughts on moving forward with a bond. One of the things that I did kind of want to put on the table for education and some food for thought for the council is the way that it was approached was for road paving. I have been intimately involved in the city and where we are as far as the city is concerned, our projected growth, what's realistically happening, and what we need to look at for needs of the city. We have a builder that has put on the table the subdivision preliminary plans for, I believe it's called Bull Run, which is going to add another 40 homes of various types to our community, which equates to about a 10% increase in our population, our base population, okay, not just our transient seasonal population. I look at things that are happening as far as fireworks coming back to Mount Rushmore. And although that's a specific event that would probably clog the roads up on the way to Mount Rushmore, that does bring in more bodies to our area, which would hopefully equate to more tourism traffic that comes through days after that occurs. In addition to that, the potential of the president visiting the Black Hills would also bring more people. When I look at the utilities that we provide for our community, our biggest focus really needs to be water and sewer. We know that on a regular basis, according to information that Alderman Minor had submitted, that every year we overrun on the capacity that's able to be processed at our wastewater treatment facility. I understand that when that facility was put in place, there was a 10-year plan before the second side was added. And although we have capacity in our off-season, if we do start to see an increase in numbers of people, and not just people that stay, but people that come into our town, we really need to take a look at the wastewater treatment and how that's handled. I also look at the water aspect of it as well. So water is something that's a life safety issue, okay? There can be no compromise on water and fresh water for our people. We know that we're adding additional residents to our community at a pretty significant jump. Although our number is low, it's not hard to jump that. We also know that we're putting up a new water tower in order to be able to support storage for that. And if we are not at capacity, that water tower that we're putting up impacts the low side. If I'm mistaken, I'm looking to Brett to correct me. But I'm also understanding that we're getting very close to our capacity on the high side if we haven't breached it already. So I understand that it's important for us to have things that look nice and things that are important to the community. And I agree, we need a plan for us to cover roads. We need to understand where we need to be in 5 to 10 years. But when I look at the reality of what's happening, I'm just looking for the council to make decisions that are based on the appropriate priority for the city. Again, there's factors that are going to happen that are going to put us in situations where we might not be adequately prepared for what's coming down the road. And I'd much rather see us have a well thought out plan in order to understand how we're going to attack this. So I just wanted to put that on the table. We will put this as a discussion item for next week, but before we move off of it, I would like to understand from the remaining council members their thoughts on playing around with our bond and maybe consolidating and taking out another one, and uses for that bond money.
And before you go there, Kathy, the road thing is one thing, whatever. We're at historic low interest rates, and so if we can borrow money that makes sense to do whatever way, whether it's roads, that's one thing that's been on.
Yep.
But if there's other infrastructure, it doesn't really matter. What we should do is investigate what our options are. That's what I did. I reached out to them and let you know that.
Yep.
It was an example, and it's just an example, and I think it's something that we seriously need to look at our tools for the funding sources for whatever it might be.
So being able to get the money is one thing, our ability to pay it back is another thing. And I think another key component associated with that is understanding what we did in 2019. So did we perform, and were the funds available in all of the different areas, and are we really taking in that money? It takes money in order to get things done. And we are not an organization that produces a commodity. We don't rely on marketing to increase our sales or increase the money that we can utilize to do projects within the community. So I think we really need to take a look at how that information is trending as well. Did we get as much as we expected? Are we seeing lows in some areas? Because I'd hate to have us commit to something based on numbers and then us not realize the income to be able to pay for what we have.
So again, Kathy, it's an investigation to find out what our capabilities are instead of sitting here not looking at these things, okay? And we are a community that derives a lot of our income off of tourism, as I presented before. And it is, so in a sense, we are, you know, the marketing aspect of this town is kind of a big deal. But, you know, it all has to be looked at, is what I think what you're trying to say.
Yep.
I get that, but who's looking at it? Nobody has, you know, to this point, looked at these options and see what they are.
Yep.
All this is to throw it on the paper and see what's out there, how it works, how it could affect us, and can we handle it? And of course, you're gonna make decisions based on revenue streams and payback, and if it makes sense.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
currently paying $200,000 a year on a bond that will retire in 6 years. We should be looking at this, and we don't seem to have any issue making that payment.
Okay, so the only last thing is the resources that are utilized to put this information together. Now, Toby Morris, I'm familiar with him through the TIF process that we used this time. Toby Morris works for an independent company. His money or his salary comes from the completion of these projects. So if we have Toby do a lot of research, and maybe it's just the fact of, is it premature to start this? But if he does a lot of research and it doesn't come to fruition, then that's one time that we've had a resource that did work that saw no monetary gain out of it. Who we use can tend to be different than our internal resources, so we just need to be careful in how we utilize that.
Yeah, he's not asking, this is a conversation that he's getting us some information so we can have the start of a dialogue.
Okay.
This isn't
And
this isn't
again-
a commitment, this isn't him charging us anything for
Right,
it.
right.
And we don't know where it's going. He knows that.
No, I agree, but I also feel more comfortable if there's more of a consensus when we reach out to external resources, so we know we're doing the right thing.
So what you're doing is you're chastising me for
I'm not-
reaching out to him.
I'm not chastising
All
anyone,
I'm doing
Jim.
is digging up information that should be dug up and put on the table for us to look at.
So Jim, perhaps you're translating what I'm trying to say, and maybe I could be saying it a little bit better. I'm not doing that. What I'm simply trying to bring to light is the fact that this group functions as a unit.
Of course it does.
And again, I've not heard any conversation from the other councilmen relative to, do we want to reach out to resources beyond our control in order to start gaining this some information? I don't know that that's the only way we can gain it, to be quite honest.
I'm not saying it is. It's a resource that's working with this community right now that, you know, hey, Toby, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And giving us some ideas as a starting point to talk about.
Absolutely.
So I don't know, I don't see the beef in terms of getting
I
that.
don't have a beef. My main point was, how do the rest of the council feel about this? Is this something that the rest of the council feels, yes, let's continue to do this and push on, and we can do that? I would just feel more comfortable with it being a conversation in an open session with council before activities like that occur. I see it no different than engaging our attorney to do work for us. If one person called,
It's not for a fee, Kathy.
I understand that it's not for a fee, but if we
It's a
continue.
general conversation at
But
the
if we
beginning
pull
to
on
see.
resources to do work for us, at some point, there may be a reluctance and we may be damaging relationships we
He's
have.
doing work for us right now.
So, in a different context and capacity. So, I'm not intending to get into a big debate with you with regard to this. I'd like to understand how the other council feel about this and moving forward with this.
Like now?
This is not a discussion. We need to put this on the agenda as a discussion.
Okay.
This was nothing but a report item.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
This is nothing more than seeking information to bring to the table.
That's fine. Would anybody like to address some public participation that would like to comment?
On this subject?
It appears.
This,
That was a report.
yeah,
It's a
this is a
report item.
report. It's not
Okay.
a discussion.
Okay. All right. So it will be added. And we will not recognize the public at this point. Okay, anything else, Mr. Peterson?
No?
Okay. All right, so for my report information, so the first thing that I'd like to do is very happy news, and it makes me smile bigger than I can fit on my face. We have been successful in securing a new public works director. I see that he's in the audience now, and at the risk of embarrassing him a little bit, I'm going to ask him to come up here if he could, and I'd like to introduce him to the council, who has not met him with the exception of Alderman Peterson. This is Travis Kettner. Travis comes to us with a wide variety of experience, and Travis will be starting with the Public Works Department tomorrow. So we'll be meeting up here at City Hall.
Good.
So I wanted to give you the opportunity to meet him. Thanks for coming, Travis. Is there anything that you'd like to relay to Travis before he embarks on his new career with the city?
Good luck.
Got that a few times already. So.
Travis, anything you'd like to tell the council? Or
No, I just appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to working with all you guys and the city, and hopefully I can do what you guys are asking me to do and make it better for everybody. So.
Okay.
February and March, that's when we get the snow.
Exactly.
You know how to run the snowplow, you have to use your shovel.
Travis
Yeah.
currently is in Sunset Creek. He's renting a home in Sunset Creek right now, so he's very local to us. So we shouldn't have issues with being able to get a hold of him or cell coverage or anything like that. So welcome aboard,
Thank
Travis.
you.
Thank you. On the heels of that, I'd like to recognize the city staff who has been stepping up and doing an outstanding job in supporting the organization while we have been short-staffed. I know it sounds like just numbers to people, but the reality is we needed leadership. We needed people, boots on the ground, to go out and work with public work staff, make sure that they knew what was going on, provide them a comfort level, give them some direction, also ensure that our city processes were handled. So Brett has really stepped up. Some of you may have seen him on the street shoveling snow when we knew that we were short people. And I appreciate that. Bill Miner, who is also on the phone, you may have seen him in the lift, the scissor lift, taking down wreaths. Unfortunately, we have some injuries and we didn't have any capable bodies to do that. And Bill was quick to jump in and help us in order to get that done. So I'd like to thank Bill Miner for that as well. And lastly but not leastly, Stacia. So you see Stacia running numbers and getting all of the information together. But Stacia has been a key player in making sure that our water testing was done, that it was delivered, the sampling was delivered. So those are all things that kind of happen behind the scenes and nobody sees. And I'd like to make sure that those people are recognized. So when you have an opportunity, you can thank them. I did attend the planning and zoning meeting. At the planning and zoning meeting, there were no action items, so there were a lot of discussion items. One thing that I would like to bring back to the council that I heard at the planning and zoning meeting, there was an initial review and an initial look at the Bull Run subdivision. And Mr. Skull was at the meeting to represent himself, even though Victor wouldn't give up his chair to him. Mr. Skull sounds extremely excited about what's happening. He's also advised us that there's another piece of property that's across the street from that was purchased by an individual. His name is escaping me at the moment. Bill, if you can help me out.
Doug Fluke.
Doug Fluke, that's what his name is. And Mr. Skull advised that Mr. Fluke has actually hired him to do the design and planning of that area, and that Mr. Skull is also looking at other properties. So this is a great relationship that we're building with him, and it's important that we make sure that we stand good on our deliverables. The staff has been working through all the phases, and hopefully that's going to give us a positive direction for housing in this area. The next thing I wanted to touch base on is Robert's Rules. So I've heard comments from the street, and I've also experienced sometimes we can be a little bit better, and it's my 2020 goal to ensure that I understand those Robert's Rules and we start using them where applicable. So going forward, you will see some more focus on how we run meetings according to Robert's Rules and what the right way is to do things. The intention is to help us become very productive and make sure that we continue to run things smoothly. So that is something that I'm going to be looking at. I've reached out to the EDC. I am also going to be reaching out to the Boys and Girls Club and the Arts Council to set up regular rotational report outs for them on a quarterly basis. So we will start to see some of those report outs. Today we had the EDC on cue, but they weren't able to make it today. So we'll see, either we'll start with them next quarter, or we can have them scheduled in between if there's something that the council would like to hear or some interaction that you'd like to have. The last couple of things that I wanted to comment on are things that were raised at our last meeting. So the first thing that came out was questions that were brought up during a public comment session from Mr. Alexander relative to a reminder letter that he received for snow accumulation and shoveling and what the requirements are. I have sent to the council under separate cover emails that provided information relative to the notices that were sent out for several periods of snow. And I believe there were a total of 15 or 16. I'm a little bit wavering on that number because one was sent out, but there was something that caused discussion, and then that one was actually retracted. So that number is a little suspect. At this point, I'm seeing what I would consider a judgment call. While there are photos, sometimes photos aren't very descriptive, and our code calls for not only snow but ice removal as well. So if there is a judgment call that needs to be discussed, that's very different than some other things that I've been hearing. So I would ask that we understand that people are here to do a job. If you have a difference of opinion, that's fine, absolutely fine. We should have that. We should be challenging each other, but let's handle it as that on a professional level. None of the staff should be chastised for a decision that they make. If there's a overriding decision, then we can handle it that way, but they need to feel free to be able to do their jobs. So those were some of the things that I found in my investigation on that, and I did look at all the letters myself, as well as the information that was sent out. The second thing that was brought up in our council meeting last time was relative to the Hill City Cafe. And although we were focusing on an electronic sign, Ms. Huska was here representing herself, and she made some allegations relative to comments that were made to her by our code enforcer, Danny Shade. I spoke with Ms. Huska, who as well confirmed what she said at the meeting, in addition to having a conversation with Danny, and I also reviewed the tape and the conversation that occurred. Danny indicated that she did not say that at any point in time. The way that Ms. Huska described it happening is she said that Danny pulled her aside into the back room and whispered into her ear. So that's what I heard on the tape. That was the information that I confirmed. I've got an employee that says that that didn't happen, and who also agrees that that is not appropriate behavior to be had on the part of our staff. This message is being reiterated to the staff. It is not appropriate behavior. We are here to do a job. Things should not be brought to a personal level. So after investigation into this and what I've been able to hear, I've determined that it happens to be a situation of one party saying one thing and another party saying something else. And for reinforcement from a staff perspective, they have all been talked to. I personally will be attending some meetings with some of the staff when they have work, not because I'm trying to micromanage anything that occurs in this organization, but because that's really the only way that I can learn what's happening and what's going on. So in addition to that is I will be inserting myself into that process. I just had the opportunity to do that with Mr. Alexander, who came with some questions on remodeling, and you can talk to Mr. Alexander, but I thought that conversation went really well. So I wanted to make sure that I closed the loop on that. With that being said, there are some comments that I was going to make relative to the railing that's been put up on the sidewalk. I know that some folks are kind of frustrated with it being there. I'm going to let Brett go ahead and cover that when he does his report out in our sidewalk, because he lived the experience and what was done when that design was created. So I'm through with my report out, and I'll turn it over to Brett.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll start with the sidewalk, since that topic's on the table here. So if you've noticed, if you've been downtown, the railing is being installed. essentially from Granite Sports down to, I think, Gold Diggers is where it ends right now. The ramp and the stairs in the middle block aren't done yet. And so it's going ahead according to plans, but I've had a few conversations with questions about it of saying, was that what it looks like, and where's the rest of it, and can't people still crawl underneath it, and whatnot. So if we go back in time, we had a sidewalk task force that was comprised of business owners, council members, the mayor, myself, engineer. There's a group of, I'll just say 8 people or so that was part of that. And so the question that I'm getting is well, why does the railing look like that? Okay, so I went back in my memory of those discussions and whatnot. One of the answers is that in certain areas, the code does not require more railing than what you'll see. It depends on the elevation change between the lower sidewalk and the upper sidewalk. If it exceeds a certain elevation change, you'll see those vertical, like a traditional deck with the spacing of the vertical bollards on there. And so you're gonna see that more of the mid-block where the ramp is and the stairs, because there's quite a significant drop-off. So it's like 3 feet, something like that. So you will see a more traditional railing in the middle of the block, and that's for safety reasons. The reason you see the railing where it is now, where the lip of that wall is only like this, is because the code doesn't require it. And so we didn't put it in. If we did put in those vertical slats, the cost of it would have been driven a lot more up. You're looking at a lot more metal, a lot more work to fabricate all of that together. Okay. The other thing that came out of that task force is that we wanted it to be a minimal impact to the view of the businesses. Essentially, we wanted that railing to blend in with the businesses as much as it could. We really didn't want that railing to become the focal point. And so by having only a very minimal railing, I think we've accomplished that. Another one was snow removal. If we've got a railing where you can't push snow, it's going to be hard to get it from that upper sidewalk down to the lower sidewalk to remove it. So that was another reason. But here's the most, I think, innovative reason why we did what we did, to leave it kind of open. And this actually is something that we wanted to preserve from the old sidewalk. You know, that old sidewalk is cracked and weird how it sloped. There was one thing that people really appreciated in that sidewalk, and it was the ability to have an ice cream cone, sit down and watch traffic go by, whether it's the rally or parades or whatnot. There was kind of a natural seating that sidewalk provided us. And so the discussion was, and this was an active discussion of saying, can we leave that element in there so people can sit there and enjoy their ice cream? Well, there is a railing up, but there's quite a bit of space in there. So I think there's an opportunity, for people to do that again. And so I think that's kind of one of the cool leftover things from the old sidewalk to the new one. Now, will people still crawl underneath there? Yes, they're going to do it. Kids will climb on that railing. Kids will go underneath the railing. Adults will try to get underneath the railing or over the railing. If we have that railing in place and they're trying to go over or underneath it, we have a better situation of saying, okay, they were injured. What transpired? Were you going underneath the railing or over it? There's a different story that you can tell of saying, look, we've created a safe environment for you to walk around, and all you need to do is walk to the end of the block or walk to the mid block in order to transition from the upper and lower sidewalk. So, that sidewalk project, again, is the focus is safety, but there were some other components in there to make it look and feel and function as best we could. The other comment I've heard is, well, the railing kind of moves all the time. It's kind of wavy. Well, that's a function of the elevations of the doors of all the businesses. They're all at different elevations. And so per code, you've got to have a certain height of handrail for people to follow. And so that handrail can't go up and down 3 or 4 inches just to maintain a constant height. It's got to move with the sidewalk. So wherever you're seeing that handrail move, that sidewalk is moving too. You just don't notice it as much with the concrete. So
The last thing I'd like you to address is the need to have that railing all the way around to the corner like it is. There's a lot of people that don't like the fact that the ability to be able to just walk up to a business has now been changed.
Yeah, so if you've ever stood right in front of the front door of the Granite Sports, and then you walk down to the former, before all of this construction, the street level, where you come to the corner of the block, there is a significant elevation change there. And if you look at the sidewalk wall that's been built there, you can see the difference between the elevation. That wall is like this, okay? So when we first went to design that corner, we were just gonna put in a ramp, starting at the corner and run the ramp up towards Granite Sports and be done with it. Well, we couldn't quite achieve ADA compliance. And the part that was missing was, when you have a ramp, you're gonna have to have railings on both sides of the ramp, okay? So if we put railings on both sides of the ramp, the railing would literally have to have been in front of the front door of Granite Sports for it to be compliant. There was no way, unless we moved the front entrance of Granite Sports further down, there was no way that we could build an ADA compliant sidewalk in order, to fit it into that space, because you've got this much elevation to achieve over, it's, 30 feet. And so the math just doesn't work out. So Kale looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and said, hey, we can have our own kind of switchback or pigtail bridge or whatever you want to call it. We just need to shift you about 8 to 10 feet this way, up about 4 feet, and then 8 to 10 feet back. And so we've kind of created this little loop. And that is ADA compliant. It makes for a better transition when customers are going in and out of Granite Sports, because they're on kind of a flat surface. We're not creating another trip hazard with a ramp immediately coming out of their front door or a railing that's in the way. And so I can see where it's different and unique. To me, it's kind of innovative, and people will get used to it. I think one of the biggest challenges is something that we've talked about earlier in this meeting, is making sure that that little ramp space is clear of snow and ice, so that it's not a kind of a trip or a slick hazard in the wintertime, because it's on that north side. So we're going to work with Public Works to make sure that that's a priority spot, just because we know that that's kind of the dark side of the building there on the north. So, okay. So that's the sidewalk project. Again, the complete concrete is on a break, essentially. They're going to ramp back up in March, to continue with the project. Really, the next step in the sidewalk itself is to remove that upper level in front of the Harley Davidson shop all the way down to Dairy Queen. Remove that, re-pour all of that, and then finish the downspout, the drainage over in front of Ben West Gallery and the Just Dandy store. And once that's done, then they can transition onto the corner of the block at the very south end corner. They're going to redo that corner with ADA compliance, and then they'll jump over to Desperados. And you'll see another, we had to do the same thing with Desperados, where we have to send people around, loop them around to get them from the lower to the upper sidewalk, just because we didn't have enough distance in order to achieve an elevation change like that. And so they'll be ramping up again in March with an expected finish date of May 1st. The mayor and I have been talking about kind of a sidewalk grand opening, celebration or whatever, kickoff. So that will be coming as well. Any questions on sidewalks?
Do you know when the street lights will be completed, or will that be this spring, or
The
street lights?
they'll be put back in this spring. It'll all be finished.
It won't be done before the end of the project.
They've been doing it as they've been going along. They're not ready to do. I know there's 2 lights that are missing right now, and those are in front of the Harley Davidson shop. They can't put them back in yet because they haven't ripped out the upper sidewalk yet. So once that gets repoured back, they can put everything back together.
Thank you.
Moving on to the water reservoir project, I'm working with Rural Water with the timing of construction. One thing that I spoke with Meg Warder about, and then I've talked to Kayla about as well, is the timing of, we need to build a crossing over the railroad tracks in order to get equipment back and forth. And so that really needs to be the priority of the first thing that gets constructed that will facilitate the rest of the construction of the water tank and whatnot. And so rural development is still asking questions about the timing of construction and the train schedule, because we have that commitment to not bother the train while they're actively providing their service to the tourists. So we're working on that with rural development. I would really like to see that, if we can work it out, to see that crossing built in April, essentially. That's when the train has their company from, I believe they're from Wyoming, come in and do all their track maintenance in the spring. They do their maintenance assessment. And so the crew that's best experienced to build it and knows Meg's tracks will be the one to do the construction. And that would be great to get that knocked out here in April. So that's what we're working on now.
So Brett, how would that affect the project if rural water still has not weighed back with the information that we need from
Right.
them?
So ideally, if we can get it built in April, then Meg's season gets rolling, not too long after that. And we knew that we were gonna be down for, construction during the main train time. That way we'd be ready to go with construction of the reservoir after the train, kind of goes silent in October. So it would delay us, every time that rural water doesn't get back to us with calendar dates or, construction date questions or whatever, it pushes us back. So it'd be nice to get that out of the way, so that we can move on to the rest of it. So, yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to minimize delays. Obviously, it's like the bid board project, we have the electrical engineer. There's certain things, we're working with private companies, independent contractors to get the work done. We try to establish deadlines and expectations from them, and they're not always able to meet it because they've got other activities going on. But this one makes a lot more sense to do it along with Meg's maintenance crew. They're gonna be here anyway, working on things, and add it to their laundry list. If we have to do it in the fall, that would mean that they would have to have an extra trip out here just for that purpose in the fall,
So we might be able to save some costs.
Right.
As well as, am I hearing this correctly, that if we can get this done in the April timeframe as you had suggested, we should be able to complete water tower construction this year? If by chance it can't be done in April, not only could we potentially incur more costs from the company, but we'd just be working on the crossing, because Meg runs, then she picks up, so she's got that little bit of a hiatus in November, but then she picks up again through the end of the year. We wouldn't be looking at tower completion or construction until 2021?
That's possible, yes.
Okay.
The main construction, if we can do this crossing, that's fairly significant. The boring of the lines underneath the train shouldn't take all of that long. The main thing is going to be, the time-consuming part will be the creation of the road up to the water reservoir site, and then the leveling off of the site to put the foundation for the water reservoir. Once that's in place, the tank itself will be built within like a week.
Okay, so the ability to be able to continue construction on that road, provided the crossing is created, could potentially run in conjunction with her regular
Yep.
routine schedules. We just have to make sure that the train crosses.
Right.
Okay, all right, so the crossing sounds like it's really a critical piece.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep. So we're looking at all of that. Obviously, there's other projects going on, like the bid board, trying to get things off the table, so to speak, and out to the bid letting process so that it can have its own life out there. And then I circle back to these other projects to pick them up, as needed. Another project that we're working on is the bridge, Major Lake Bridge. There are some concerns between the state and the Forest Service about environmental impacts and archaeological impacts. There's been some studies done of our road right-of-way, and then there were some other studies that were previously done about the spillway as far as impact and the relocation of our sewer line. And so, we're going to, the gist of our project is the bridge, but in order to accommodate the bridge, we had to relocate, or are planning to relocate the sewer line to the west a little bit and underneath the spillway, and then have it pop out over towards the direction of Subway. So we're looking at the staging areas and the temporary work easement area. And so the state and the Forest Service, I believe that we have all of the studies done that we needed to in order to make sure that we're not negatively impacting either one of those things. I think it's really a communication issue between the Forest Service and the state, and so the engineer and I are gonna broker that communication, and we're setting up a meeting for later this week to make sure that we're filling in the gap between those two things. I'm not quite sure why there's a language barrier there, but one exists, and so we're gonna try to figure that one out. On top of that, we're modifying our special use permit that we currently have out there. We just renewed that about 3 or 4 years ago. Because we're moving that sewer line, we've got to show that in the map, and so it's essentially just producing the new map document with the planned location of the sewer line.
Who's accountable for the modification of the maps?
That's gonna be Kale. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's something that is gonna be done, I would say by next week. There doesn't have to be any engineering to it, it's just an exhibit. It's not like an engineered drawing. We already
Okay.
have all the engineered drawings done through Burroughs Engineering.
We just need that other map
Yeah.
also.
So when this project started, was the sewer line identified and had to be moved at the beginning of the project?
No, and I'll tell you why. That sewer line runs underneath the bridge right now, and it's kind of exposed. And so the state wanted us to build another bridge there, and instead we convinced them that we can do the same, provide the same service to that road if we just did a double box culvert. And so there was still thought that we could put the sewer line in there underneath the box culvert, not through it, but underneath it. But there were some engineering challenges that came about it as that was engineered, the box culvert. And so just as the final plans have been made, so we're talking November, I got the final plans. They had to make the modifications to bring the sewer line, because it runs down Major Lake Drive. Now it's gonna have to hop up to the west underneath the spillway and then go down to the south. So we didn't know that until the past 2 or 3 months that it was gonna take that direction. And we didn't even know that there was some talk of doing that, but there was no guarantee that that elevation would work. And so they had to do the engineering to prove that out. And so they did the plans, they did the engineering, they shot the elevations and said, yeah, that's a viable location to take it. So this isn't something that we knew about a year ago that we could have knocked all of this out. It was something that just came up in the past couple months.
Thanks.
I expect us to get that special use permit, all of the information that should be done by the end of next week. And then this communication gap, I believe all of the elements are in place to answer those questions or concerns that the state and the Forest Service have. And I've met with them 2 weeks ago, meet with them again, hopefully later this week to hammer it all out.
So what can the council expect for the next meeting when we talk about this bridge project?
The special use permit, all of that should be done.
So
As
you'll
far as
confirm that that's
submittals of
all
it,
done?
they still
Okay.
need to process it in their office, but that shouldn't take very long. Because it's just within this office, they don't need to check in with their main national
Okay.
office.
Okay,
This communication should occur with the state as far as connecting on this environmental and archaeological impact.
okay,
That information sharing should occur by the end of this week. Now, it's up to them. That's where the waiting game is, that they're okay with all of those discussions, that we've crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is. So
Okay.
I can't guess as to, if they're okay with everything.
Okay.
We've been working closely with the state. We've been working closely with the Corps of Engineers. I'm told by Bros Engineering that everything is in place as far as documentation and studies and everything to satisfy any questions that they may have.
Okay.
So,
What I would like to do as we move forward in the future is, once we complete these projects, take a look at the overall timeline and where the greatest spend of our time has been. So if it's in engineering, or if it's in waiting for subsequent designs like from the electrical, so then we can understand what drives our timeline out, and we can see what we can do to pull that in.
sure.
Okay.
The next project is the business improvement, the second half of project number 1. The senior, Buzz Grover, and I met with the architect, and with Kale came to the meeting as well, our engineer. The architect says that the mechanical plans are to be at his office by the end of this month, so January 31st. So I'm planning on a bid board meeting. I think it's whatever the first Thursday is of February, for the bid board to eyeball those plans and get their impression and approval and recommendation and move forward. And so once we can pin that down, then we'll bring it to you and explain everything and put that one out to bid as well. So that next milestone is the bid board meeting on that first week in February. And then I think it's the 10th, is that February 10th, the next council meeting? To bring that information to you, that the mechanical is there, and then probably bring it to you for approval for bid letting, probably the 24th of February, because we need to get that one out as well.
Okay. Okay.
But I need to communicate with the bid board first before I bring you their recommendation, because there's obviously going to be some tweaking that might happen to that.
That Thursday the 6th?
I believe Friday, it's Thursday the 6th.
Thursday.
I don't have it
Yep, the
calendar.
6th. Okay.
And then the last thing, this isn't on your agenda packet, but the mayor brought up the TIF and the development that the city's working with. Jim Skull and Planning and Zoning is working on that, and our development services staff is working on that as well. So we continue to work with Jim Skull to address any questions as it relates to the property itself. We're working on the plat configuration with the size of the plats, or lots, the number of lots, the road, how the road curves, the road width, all of those things. And so we're looking at all of those detailed things, and that's what we do as staff. We get things ready to a standard that it's 95, 97, 99% ready before it gets to you guys. And then you ask those questions and look at things and review it, and maybe there's something that you guys see that we didn't catch. But we try to get it as close to finished as we can. So that's what we're doing with Mr. Skull and his group, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's really that technical review of wading through all of that information. It's kind of like the sidewalk, there's reasons why we did the railing, why we did. There's reasons why that wall looks like it is. There's a history there to it. So it's in their process. So they're working on such things as the setbacks, the tiny homes that Mr. Skull's interested in constructing, and then the construction standards themselves. There is going to be a planned unit development. It's zoned residential out there, but there's going to be a planned unit development. And all that simply means is that there's a vision to that property and how Mr. Skull would like to see it develop out, and that it's kind of, there's some variances that will be involved of how the look and feel of that little subdivision he wants to look forward. And so it's really just a laundry list of, here's our code, but here are the items that we would like an adjustment off of in order to create that subdivisional space. So Planning and Zoning Commission, by our code, is designated with the authority and the duty to work through all of that planned unit development. And I call it pretty much a punch list or a bullet point list of all these things that are different and unique from the code that we currently have. And planning and zoning is gonna go through that, and they're the ultimate decider. The way our code is set up is that they're the ones that give the final approval of that project. So, but with that being said, you guys do have a role and a part of that PUD process. And in the code, and we sat down and we looked at this because we're getting closer and closer to setting up dates for this review to happen. So we're looking at P&D, there's a hearing date that's gonna be set, and I think that the information has already gone out. That will occur, the hearing with P&Z will occur on February 3rd. And they're gonna do the hearing, the public hearing with notice, and so letters have gone out for that meeting, plus they're gonna do the preliminary plat approval. So you'll see all of that work that's been taking place over the past couple of months come to fruition there. After that hearing date, those comments, that plan plus whatever comments that were achieved during that hearing are going to get kind of combined, and that plat will be, that PUD will be updated. And then information will be brought to you for participation. That's on February 10th. And so essentially your role in this PUD process is to look at, there's about 6 different items, and some of them are kind of redundant, but in the code, the legislative body, which is the Common Council, looks at public park space needs, other public lands, as it relates, if you're looking at schools or other public space that we have a need for in a development. Public rights of way, obviously we need that road that's going through there, the road construction itself, any traffic safety devices where it links into top of hill, so that we're making sure everybody's getting to work and home safely. And then preservation of any natural or historical resources on the property. And so there's kind of a defined role that you guys get to inject some of your thoughts and feelings on that part of the code and add that to the comment of the PUD process. Once you guys come up with your recommendation, then we'll get your approval of that. That gets forwarded back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their final approval of the PUD. Now, I will let you know, all of those things I just mentioned, there's about 6 items that talk about park space, road construction, public safety, traffic. We're already putting all of that together, so I don't have an expectation that you individually need to do anything. We're coming up with those project details. We will present those to you and just make sure that you're comfortable with them. By all means, if there's other additional comments on top of it, we'd want to hear that as well. But we're going to bring you a package of what those are and what it will look like. Okay. So then on the 17th, it will go back to the Planning and Zoning for formal final action for the PUD, and then that will also be their final plat approval that we normally do for them, that they're finalizing it. And then at that time, that plat still needs to come back to you guys because you guys have the ultimate approval for the plat process. And so that will come back to you on February 24th to finalize the plat, okay? So it's kind of a tag team. We all have our own specific roles associated to it. The other thing that we're working on, and this is something that Toby Morris has put together. I've reviewed it. I've just sent it to Talbot last week. And it's the developer's agreement that needs to be signed between Mr. Skoll's company and the city. And it really just defines the TIF port, the financial expectations of how the TIF works and who's on the hook for reimbursing money and the time frame of which the TIF works and whatnot. And so once Talbot's had a chance to review that and we've discussed those things, we'll get it to you for review and we'll explain everything on there. It's a fairly simple document. I think it's only about 4 or 5 pages long. It's pretty straightforward, but it's another complementary piece to the project plan that was previously reviewed, banking information, and there was something else, just certification that the TIF district was already created. So it's just kind of bundling it all together and matching it up with the PUD, and it's kind of the culmination of everything. So that developer agreement, we'll definitely have that ready by February 24th. If it makes sense to bring it sooner, we could do that on the 10th, but for sure, you'll see it on the 24th. So, a lot going on. Like the mayor said, we've been a little bit short-staffed on Public Works. Just a few coordination things, people's days off. We've been kind of backfilling with making sure that we're watching our water supply, how much we pump, the testing of it. Stacia's been great with coordinating with the guys with the water testing, making sure he gets to the lab and all of our compliance stuff. So we are very, very excited to have Travis on board.
Okay, so before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to make an announcement. So I spoke with Janet, and unfortunately she isn't here tonight. It's not a chamber report out night, but there is, she's planning a Hill City night at the Rush game, which is gonna be April 5th. She's currently working on exactly all the details, whether it'll be discount tickets and Hill City will be recognized as a city. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it so people can save that date. And more details will follow as soon as Janet gets all that in a row. The other event that's out there that's been planned is April 25th. Last year there was a 1920 speakeasy night at the senior center. And that will happen again this year on April 25th. The time will be 5 to 8. There will be more gambling opportunities to win tickets for prizes. And we had a really good turnout last year, some authentic Italian style Chicago food, so we're planning the same thing. And those are big things happening. I'll entertain a motion
I got a
to,
question. So Brett, if I were changing a zoning from, say, residential to commercial, would the council have to approve that?
Yes,
So is a PUD then not a zoning?
the PUD is not a zoning. It's a development layer within zoning. You know, that's one of the revisions that was made back in 2014 when we revised the zoning codes and the sign code ordinance. It used to be called PDZ.
PDZ.
Yep, and that was a zone in and of itself. And under the new code, it is not. It is a state of development within any zoning. So it could be commercial, it could be residential, whatever, it doesn't matter. And it makes sense because with PDZ, it didn't have its own inherent standards, so to speak. It was kind of a blank slate. And so you could create whatever you wanted to without having what I call a safety net of regulations. So why it's more appropriate to have a planned unit development or a PUD as a state of development within zones is that if you have, so let's just use the TIF as an example, that property is zoned R2. That has all the rules and restrictions associated to R2. So there is a safety net, that's what I call it, that those rules exist. Okay? What happens with the PUD is that the developer comes in and says, I recognize those rules that are in the R2 zoning, but I have a different vision that it doesn't quite match up with what those rules are. And so the developer has to tell us, okay, these are the laundry list of items. Is there 12 of them? There could be 3 of them. There could be 20 of them that don't jive with the current code. And that's what we try to help Jim Skoll flesh that list out. That is unique and different that we want an accommodation for. And some of them are setbacks. Instead of a 20-foot, 5-foot setback, it gets reduced to 20 foot or 15 foot. And so it's like a laundry list of variances almost, but it's packaged in one big bundled thing. And so the rest of those rules for R2 are still in place. Everything else still exists. So we're just identifying those unique things that are different and what they are as far as the current rule and what they would like them to be going forward just for their development.
and Brett, I also believe that the process relative to approvals and who plays what part in that whole process was validated.
Mhm.
Who was that validated with, do you recall? I believe Danny reached out to,
Yeah, Danny reached out to, because this is, we don't do these every day. I mean, they happen every 15, 20 years or whatever. She had a discussion with the planning and zoning person at a Rapid City, and their planning and zoning commission. It functions in an almost identical manner. They actually don't bring anything to the city council. In ours, we bring those 6 items that I just discussed with you to involve you into the process. And here's one of the reasons why. This is the reason why it's done this way and not ultimate approval to the city council, is that the developer can come in, P&Z has that technical knowledge, they're used to reviewing everything at more of a detailed level. And that P&Z could say, look, we like, out of your laundry list of 12 items, we like 10 of them, but we don't like 2 of them, so you're not gonna get them. Okay? We're not going to budge on those 2 elements. If that happens and they say, look, we're not gonna approve those other 2, there's an appeal process. Again, we're talking about processes that we follow. The developer, in this case Jim's Cole, could come back and say, well, look, I wanna appeal your decision, planning and zoning. I wanna bring it to the city council for their review and understanding that I'm thankful that I got these 10 things that I wanted, but I really need these other 2 to make it completely work. There's an opportunity there for you to be the appeal board in such things so that we can still transact business and get things done and take it that one level further without ending up in court somewhere in some kind of a civil dispute. So, this is not a unique process by any means. Rapid City follows it. This is a process that is out of that template of the 2006, zoning, planning zone. I know it's different. I know that zoning comes through here for final approvals. I know individual variances come through here. This is just how they've set it up, and it makes some sense that there's really a need
So
to do a
technically the
technical
zoning
review.
isn't changing.
Pardon me?
Technically, the zoning isn't changing.
The zoning is not changing.
It's adding the PUD aspect to it.
Yep, it's adding a layer to it of a state of development where there are unique requests to modify existing rules, but those other rules that are not being requested to change are in effect still. The expectation is that they meet it. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Alderman Johnson, second Alderman Jarvis, all in favor?
Hey.
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, even though I didn't mean to